Fewer than 10% of New York office workers have returned to the office as of last month. A quarter of major employers expect to bring their people back by the end of the year. That's just a quarter. And according to a new survey, only 54% of those companies say they will return to the office in July 2021. So, what does this mean for Manhattan real estate? We're going to deep dive into a New York Times article on that this morning. And also, then, what does that mean for those folks who are working from home? Who's going to manage those? So, we've got a Washington Post article on a head of remote work. What companies are looking for? Are they recruiting a head of work or head of remote work? How are they managing that? We're going to dig into that article. And then, when we think about the future of work, how will people be managing it? And it's a Forbes article. BCG contributed on the hybrid workplace. What does that mean? And how will then we manage that going forward? So a packed show this morning. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to OSW Daily. A lot to get through, as you just heard. As I think about global head of workplace for Nasdaq, founder of Open Source Workplace, this is a really important few articles I think that we need to be sort of reviewing as we want to understand how people are going to return to the office. We look for data. We look for key things that. Information that's going to provide us with context that we can take to our leadership and we can take it bring it within our teams so that we can manage and sort of help foresee what we think we should be doing. So be it to manage real estate, be it to provide services or manage a workplace. So I am really excited to dig into this content today. So if this is your first time coming across the channel, thank you. I appreciate your time and I hope you find this useful. If you do, please let me know. You can reach out to me. The email that's on the screen, oswdaily@gmail.com. You can write comments, but please subscribe. Please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment. It is important, and I like to hear people's views on what's good, what's bad, and ways we can improve. If you're returning, I appreciate that I haven't scared you off this week, just been by myself. Good news is I do have guests lined up for Monday and Tuesday of next week, and I will be pursuing additional guests. Sim format where we're going to be interviewing, chatting, casual conversation around what is the key topics for the day. So on Monday, Ken Van Sommeren, who will be joining us, and on Tuesday, Karen Gill will be joining us as well. So really look forward to hear their insights and some of their thoughts, what they went up to this summer, what are things are front and foremost in their mind around workplace, the future of work, and we'll be digging into some content there. So lots to really unpack next week, and I'm sure it'll be a much better experience for you, the viewer, and also for me, because I get to hear alternative opinions, which I really love to do. So what are we going to talk about? As I said, so let's dig into the first article. Manhattan office buildings are empty, but for how long? And the reason why this is so important, Manhattan is so important, the office real estate is bigger in New York and Manhattan than London and San Francisco combined. And obviously in Manhattan, a large number of financial institutions and other companies are headquartered in New York. So it really is a leading indicator. Also, given the extent that COVID was rampant in New York, it also, I think, highlights and provides guidance on perhaps some things we can look to in the future for other cities in the US, but also around the world. And I opened with some statistics from a recent survey. And I want to go back over those because it shouldn't be lost, some of the data points. Only fewer than 10% of New York workers have returned to the office in the month of August. That's really low. Now, we can say it's the vacation, we can say whatever that is, but only 10%. But just a quarter of major employers expect to bring their employees back by the end of the year. So what does that tell us? That tells us employers are uncertain about what their future is, and tells us employees are uncertain about, are a little uneasy about coming into the city. Only 54% of these companies say they will return by July 2021. Only half. Now, granted, many have probably not decided. We don't know what that number is. I don't know what percentage of the balance that is. I don't know what percentage actually have said, no, we're not going back. So while that 54% headline is a big number, we don't know what the balance is, and that might change the perspective on what that is. But what does that mean? Well, it means demand for space has slumped. There are projections that I've heard from multiple sources that says that the vacancy rates in Manhattan are going to increase to probably between 25 to 30%. That's crazy numbers. Now, what does that mean for those who are searching for space or trying to dispose of space today? Well, the article goes into a number of tenants who are trying to sublease large amounts of real estate, and there is expectation that sublease space is going to come to the market in through the fall, and that's what's really driving. And the article quotes a Savills broker who basically says, today you could buy real estate with a 15% discount, but why would you buy a 15% discount today when you can likely get a further discount coming down the road? And if you're in the search for a large piece of real estate, then why would you sign today, or why would you search today unless you had to? Those organizations that have had to because they got lease expirations in the next 12 to 24 months, whenever they're reviewing their leasing strategy, the article notes that they're only doing short-term renewals, so maybe 12 to 24 months. Now, it's worth noting that that's really unheard of in New York City. New York City typically does not do that sort of length of the deals. Usually they're much, much longer given the type of tenants that are searching for space in New York City. So what does that mean in a number of different things? Whenever we look at, okay, so who is renting, who is taking on space? If we look back historically, last year was the highest lease rates in New York. This year is only at half in the first 8 months. Now, what we don't know is how much of that half was done in the first quarter versus the second quarter. But in recent years, actually, the biggest leasing of space has been co-working companies. And WeWork was and is the largest private tenant in the city. And co-working actually accounted for 8% in 2019 and 12% in 2018. Now, obviously, given the business, the model, and that segment of the market, that's had a severe impact on leasing strategies for New York. So it really does tell us that I think real estate is going to be getting cheaper. Organizations don't really want to come back. They're not prepared to commit to bringing staff back. And obviously that's knock-on effects. And not just in the financial, or not just in the office space sector. Obviously there are knock-on effects in what that means. That means there's less people coming into the city. So all those businesses that actually rely on the commuter traffic, they're being impacted. All those businesses that are around those office buildings that actually rely on those for lunches, dinners, events, they're suffering also. And the sublease space, as mentioned previously, is what is going to be driving a lot of these the large increase in real estate that's coming to the marketplace. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. There have been a couple of companies that are really invested in New York over the last few months, most notably Facebook and Amazon. Now, Facebook took on a 730,000 square feet lease in the building next to Penn Station, and obviously Amazon acquired from WeWork the Lord and Taylor building on Fifth Avenue. So this shows two organizations who are committed to New York. And I think it's a sentiment that I think most large organizations have on the city. I do believe they believe New York will come back. This is a temporary fix. New York's been through many atrocities over the last 15, 20 years, and it always recovers. And I think New York will always recover. I think there are many organizations sitting on the sideline waiting for that recovery. And Hudson Yards, people are still looking to move into the building. Retail may be suffering, but there is still a demand for the space. Now, if organizations are not bringing tenants or not bringing their employees to the building, well, what are they doing? They're working remotely. So how are companies managing that workforce? Some companies have taken the approach of actually hiring a remote manager, and some have actually taken an approach of, no, we'll just let each individual business or function within the organization look after the remote for their specific specialties. And that's the next article I want to touch on, which comes from the Washington Post, the head of remote work. Now, it's a fascinating interview with Darren Murphy, who is the head of remote for GitLab. And for those who don't know, GitLab is an organization that has always worked remotely. They've never had an office. Well, they did have one office in San Francisco one time for their CEO, but they have created this huge open source software business where they all work remotely. And there are many interviews out there. I actually have one on Open Source Workplace. If you go and you search a Y Combinator interview of GitLab, you'll be able to watch how they put that together. And you can actually go to their website and download their handbook, which is greatly detailed on how they manage their remote work. And what's interesting is the article actually notes some companies, some really high distinguished companies who are actively seeking or in the process of seeking a director of remote work or a head of remote work. That's Facebook, Okta, and Quora. Now, these are companies of different sizes. Quora, a company of 200 people, so you can sort of, to be a director of remote work for a company of 200 people, that's quite a significant role. Facebook, I can understand a little bit given the size of the company, but I'm also a little surprised in the sense of, Hewlett Packard's approach, the article notes, has been to provide or put the onus on each individual segment. So, HR has their function, technology from real estate, and they look after the remote segments of their business, which means an expansion of duties, which I think is probably be my sort of preferred approach if I was going to look at it. Now, it also notes that Glassdoor and LinkedIn have not yet seen a significant increase in titles, job searches, or job titles of remote work. So while there are outliers, I think there are no clear indicators of what approach organization is going to take. And I think it almost goes back to most organizations are in that assessing stage right now, and they will actually look in the future to sort of understand what does that mean. In the GitLab's, Murphy actually goes on to sort of say, he sees the head of remote almost the way organizations have added a chief diversity officer. So, the role will actually be responsible for, the meetings, navigating time zones, creating legal terms, thinking about employee moves, planning online events, company culture, advocating for remote employees and planning their benefits. So it really is being an advocate for the remote worker, putting processes and protocols in place to allow that remote worker to, one, function, be productive, but also interact and be involved in the culture of the organization. So it really is an interesting role. And some organizations have sort of seen this as it's a temporary thing. And the article quotes the president of customer experience of Slack, Ali Ryle. I apologize, Ali, if I've mispronounced your name there. But in essence, she sees it as a short-term role as we go through this pandemic. So it'll be really interesting to see. And I sort of think with the next article, I think sort of allows us to expand that a little bit further. But before we get to that, I want to talk about another person who's quoted, Liz Burrow, who's the former vice president of workplace strategy at WeWork. She believes more companies will put someone in charge of coordinating remote work or naming something like that, like a hybrid workplace coordinator or something like that. But the important bit that Liz mentions that sort of ties into where I think Ali was going and also leads us nicely into our third article is Liz notes, if we really want to rethink the future, it's not about space. It's about new roles. People are forgetting real estate is just a platform for things to happen. We need to think about who's curating what's happening and how. So we think about that, we look at the real estate, in New York, we take about the role of remote work. It actually is all about how do we allow and enable and empower employees to be their most productive, irrespective of where they are, and how do we do that? And it's almost part of an interview I did with Phil Kirshner, you may recall, is the chief work officer. So who's going to be responsible for ensuring each employee, no matter where they are, no matter where they work, actually has what they need to be their most productive? And it may be a physical space, it may be a home space, it may be wherever, but it's all about how do we ensure that individuals have what they need. So I think it is going to be some sort of hybrid. I think HR will have a lead within this. I think I'm sure real estate will, and technology will play a big part, because I think as we transition, we're going to see much more organizations talk about a digital workplace, a digital transformation within their work to allow people to work, to allow people to collaborate, but then also how they manage HR, manage facilities, manage real estate, and allow people to function and do their work. So it really is it's going to be an interesting time to see how organizations do this. And it leads us nicely into, well, what do we believe the future of work is going to be? Many believe it's going to be a hybrid. We noted yesterday that 89% of people want to work from the office at least one day a week, which means that's 89% of people want to work from home at some time, maybe even 100%. So what does that mean? Is that hybrid solution the right way? And I just want to go through this BCG contributed a report to Forbes where they note a number of really important statistics. Research indicates that employers seem satisfied with employees working from home. Employees seem satisfied working from home. So when you have mutual agreement, then it is very easy to align and come to a consensus of what actually is the right approach. I think before the pandemic, I think there was an agreed assumption or an agreed agreement, if it's sort of two agreements anyway, you know what I'm saying. There was agreement that actually the office was the best place to be. Most people wanted to go to the office. Most people wanted to be in the office. Employers wanted people in the office. But today there seems to be a realization that flexi work, hybrid work, however we want to look at it, is an agreement between employees and also the employer because they can see the benefit. So a couple of studies that BCG did, and it's very country specific. So BCG surveyed 12,000 US, German, and Indian employees whose jobs can be done remotely. Virtually anywhere there's a high-speed interconnection found that 60% overall, 70% of the United States would like to continue to working from home at least some time after COVID. Again, supporting what we discussed yesterday, and also this hypothesis that the 3+2 hybrid or whatever it is going to be a way of the future. In Australia, Workforce Sentiment Survey released in June 23rd found that employees who can work remotely want to keep doing so, but not every day, confirming that the office still has a role, albeit a changing one. I think that's important to note. I think most people will want to go into the office. It may not be to do head down work. It may be to be more social with their colleagues. It may be for a huge event that they want to be participate in. I think there's going to be alternative reasons and why people will want to go to the office. Also, a survey in France, the National Association of Human Resource Directors found that 85% of the 306 HR respondents consider the long-lasting development of remote working in their company desirable. 2/3 of the respondents said they expect productivity gains from the advancement of a remote work. And this leads me into a KPMG study that I read quite recently, where it was a survey that respondents surveyed early in the pandemic and then followed up a few months later. Productivity has increased over time. Humans are really adaptable, right? We talked about yesterday about the culture, and those organizations that are agile, they can transform and they can move quickly, and they're the ones that are going to be gain and get benefit. Organization, I think individuals, I think employees are finding ways to get more productive, to find better uses of their time. You know, they don't feel they're sitting on Zoom calls all day long. We're learning how to manage our time. We're learning how to manage these various things. And obviously with this, with these productivity gains, there are flip sides, and it sort of ties back into what we talked about before. There are cost savings. 6 out of 10 employers believe increased telework will likely reduce such costs as rent, utilities, taxes, cleaning services, and even food. So it leads us back into that first article we reviewed. Will Manhattan recover? Will real estate recover? Of course it will. Will it get back to where it was? We're unsure. We don't know. But employers and companies are waiting to see. They're waiting to see what their employees want to do. They want to see, okay, well, how do they want to work in the future? And that should naturally lead to cost reductions in real estate. And I think it's a really important thing. So it's going to be an interesting space to watch. Again, do go check out those articles, you know, as you put together thoughts, ideas to share with your organization, with colleagues at work. You know, do rely on these articles as really good sources. And within them, each of them, there are links to the actual research. So go check them out. They are important, and I think they're valuable. So please do go check it out. And as I said, if you like this, do share. Do let me know your thoughts. As I said, next week I'm excited to be having people to interview and chat with, rather than this monologue for you. But as I said, I do feel I'm committed to the channel. I do want to participate and share information and bring content. Some people just don't like to read content. Some people like just to be told and sort of summarized in many forms. That's why newsletters do so well. So again, we have a newsletter. So if you don't want to listen to this, but you want to hear what we're talking about and what are the things that are front of mind for Open Source Workplace, do sign up for the newsletter, and you will get that each morning, each weekday morning, where you can catch up and sort of grasp what are the things that we're going to be talking about here. So, look, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know you're busy and you have other things you can be doing, so I appreciate for spending some time with me. So until next week, there'll be no OSW Daily tomorrow, but back on Monday with Ken Van Sommer, and remember on Tuesday, Karen Gill. So do be on the lookout, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend. Thank you.